The morning briefing room at Nellis Air Force Base hummed with the usual pre-flight tension. Coffee-stained maps spread across metal tables like surgical instruments. 37 pilots filled uncomfortable chairs, their flight suits bearing patches that told stories of deployments, kills, and close calls. At the front of the room, General Marcus Holloway adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and studied the satellite imagery projected on the wall with the intensity of a man who'd seen too many young pilots come home in boxes. "What you're looking at," Holloway began, his voice carrying the gravelly authority of 3 decades in military aviation, "is something that shouldn't exist." The image showed a formation of aircraft flying in perfect symmetry over the Nevada desert, their silhouettes barely visible against the dawn sky. These photographs were taken yesterday at 5:47 hours by one of our reconnaissance drones. The formation is flying at Angels 20, maintaining radio silence, and according to our radar operators, they appeared out of nowhere. Captain Vivienne Ghost Marchetti sat in the back row, her dark eyes scanning the image with methodical precision. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd learned early that being underestimated was often an advantage. Her call sign had nothing to do with her pale complexion or tendency toward silence. It came from her uncanny ability to appear exactly where she was needed most, often when situations seemed hopeless. "The concerning element," Holloway continued, clicking to the next slide, "is that we have no record of any scheduled flights in that airspace. No flight plans, no radio chatter, no identification transponders. It's as if these aircraft materialized from thin air and dissolved just as quickly." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. "I'm going to be frank with you. In 43 years of military service, I've never encountered anything quite like this formation pattern." The room erupted in whispered speculation. Some pilots suggested experimental aircraft from other branches. Others theorized about foreign incursions or classified testing programs. Holloway raised his hand for silence, then delivered the line that would change everything. "I've consulted with our most experienced tacticians, and the consensus is clear. Only veterans who have flown combat missions in specific theaters would recognize this particular formation structure." Ghost's hand shot up with mechanical precision, cutting through the murmur of voices like a blade through silk. The gesture was so sudden, so unexpected from the usually quiet pilot in the back row, that every head in the room turned toward her. Holloway's eyebrows lifted slightly, surprise flickering across his weathered features as he registered who was speaking. "Yes, Captain Marchetti." Her voice carried across the silence with crystal clarity. "Sir, that's a modified Sarajevo sweep formation, adapted for desert terrain reconnaissance." The general took an involuntary step backward, his face draining of color as if she just revealed classified information that should have been impossible for her to know. The room fell into absolute, suffocating silence. Ghost knew that look. She'd seen it before, in briefing rooms and cockpits across 3 continents. It was the moment when everything changed, when respect and fear collided in the eyes of superior officers who suddenly realized they were looking at someone whose experience ran deeper than her rank suggested. General Holloway's reaction told her everything she needed to know about the formation in those photographs, and more importantly, about why identifying it correctly had just made her the most dangerous person in the room. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before Holloway cleared his throat, his composure returning like armor sliding back into place. But Ghost had caught that moment of vulnerability, that flash of genuine surprise that suggested she just identified something that was supposed to remain buried in classified files. Around her, 36 other pilots shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the sudden change in atmospheric pressure that comes when unspoken truths surface in military briefings. "Captain Marchetti," Holloway said slowly, his voice carrying a new weight of consideration, "perhaps you'd care to elaborate on your familiarity with this particular formation." The question hung in the air like smoke from a crashed aircraft, heavy with implications that reached far beyond simple tactical knowledge. Ghost remained perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap with military precision. She'd spent years perfecting the art of revealing just enough information to be useful while keeping the shadows of her past intact. Sir, I flew reconnaissance missions over the Balkans between 2009 and 2012. The Sarajevo sweep was developed for urban surveillance in mountainous terrain, but what we're seeing here has been modified. She paused, her analytical mind processing details that others had missed. The spacing between aircraft has been widened for desert conditions, and the altitude differential suggests they were conducting systematic area surveillance rather than target acquisition. The general's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Ghost recognized the look. It was the same expression she'd seen on Colonel Bradley's face in Kandahar when she'd correctly identified Taliban supply routes that intelligence agencies had missed for months. It was the look of a commanding officer, realizing that one of his pilots possessed knowledge that could either solve a critical problem or create an even bigger one. The Sarajevo sweep, Holloway repeated slowly, as if testing the words against his own classified memories, was considered so effective that it was restricted to special operations units. His eyes never left Ghost's face as he spoke. The formation you've identified was used in exactly 3 documented missions, all of which remain classified to this day. Ghost felt the familiar weight of unwanted attention settling on her shoulders like a flight harness that was too tight. She'd hoped to serve out her remaining years at Nellie's in relative anonymity, training new pilots and perfecting her skills on familiar aircraft. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Sir, with respect, if those aircraft are using modified Sarajevo sweep formations, then whoever is flying them has access to classified tactical information that should be restricted to a very small number of personnel. The implications of her statement rippled through the briefing room like shock waves from a sonic boom. Holloway's expression hardened into the mask of a man who just realized that a routine morning briefing had transformed into a potential national security crisis. Holloway studied the satellite imagery again, this time with the focused intensity of someone seeing familiar patterns in unfamiliar contexts. The formation that had puzzled intelligence analysts for hours suddenly made perfect sense through the lens of Ghost's identification. Captain, I need you to walk me through exactly what you're seeing in this photograph, detail by detail. His voice carried the quiet urgency of a man who just realized that time might be running out. Ghost rose from her chair with fluid grace, moving toward the front of the room as 36 pairs of eyes tracked her movement. She'd done this before, analyzed enemy formations under pressure, provided tactical assessments that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. But never in a briefing room full of peacetime pilots who looked at her like she was either a security risk or a walking classified document. The lead aircraft is flying point, approximately 200 meters ahead of the main formation, she began, using a laser pointer to highlight specific elements in the photograph. The spacing indicates they're using enhanced radar cross-section reduction techniques, flying just far enough apart to avoid creating a single large signature while maintaining visual contact. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd seen these patterns from the inside of a cockpit rather than through satellite imagery. The supporting aircraft are arranged in a modified diamond pattern, but notice the altitude differential. Each aircraft is flying at a slightly different level, creating a 3-dimensional reconnaissance grid. Ghost paused, studying the image with the methodical precision of a surgeon examining X-rays. This isn't random. This formation provides overlapping sensor coverage while minimizing the risk of simultaneous detection. It's textbook special operations reconnaissance, adapted for wide-area surveillance. Major Rebecca Torres, one of the squadron's most experienced pilots, leaned forward in her seat. Captain, how can you be so certain about their mission parameters from a single satellite image? Her tone carried professional skepticism rather than hostility, the question of a pilot who'd learned to verify information before acting on it. Ghost appreciated the directness of the question. It was exactly what she would have asked in Tor's position. The formation spacing, Major. If they were conducting target acquisition or strike preparation, the aircraft would be clustered differently, with tighter defensive positioning and more obvious electronic warfare support. This spread pattern is designed for intelligence gathering, maximum sensor coverage with minimum detection risk. General Holloway nodded slowly, pieces of a complex puzzle falling into place in his mind. Captain Marchetti, given your analysis, what would you estimate is the operational capability of whoever is flying these aircraft? The question carried weight beyond mere tactical curiosity. It was the query of a commanding officer who needed to understand the scope of a potential threat. Ghost considered her response carefully, knowing that her next words would determine how the rest of this conversation unfolded. Sir, based on the precision of the formation and the sophistication of the tactical approach, we're looking at highly trained personnel with access to advanced aircraft and comprehensive knowledge of special operations procedures. This isn't amateur hour. The briefing room fell into thoughtful silence as the implications of Ghost's assessment settled over the assembled pilots. What had begun as a mysterious sighting was rapidly evolving into something that could reshape their understanding of airspace security and operational readiness. Holloway glanced at the clock on the wall, calculating how much time he had before this information needed to reach higher command levels. "Very well, Captain," Holloway said, his voice carrying the weight of decisions that couldn't be unmade. "I'm assigning you as primary analyst for this situation. You'll work directly with intelligence to determine the origin and intent of these aircraft." He paused, studying her face for any signs of reluctance or concern. "I trust you understand the sensitive nature of what we've discussed here today." Ghost nodded, recognizing both the opportunity and the burden being placed on her shoulders. "Understood, sir. When do I begin?" Her voice carried the steady confidence of someone who'd accepted difficult assignments before, though privately she wondered if this particular mission would finally force her to confront the shadows she'd spent years trying to leave behind. "Immediately," Holloway replied. "Report to Intelligence Section at 1400 hours. They'll brief you on additional surveillance data that hasn't been shared with the general pilot population." His tone suggested that what she'd seen in the briefing room was only the beginning of a much larger and more complex situation. As the general dismissed the briefing, Ghost remained in her seat while other pilots filed out of the room, their conversations buzzing with speculation about the mysterious formation and their quiet colleague who'd suddenly become the center of attention. She stared at the satellite image still projected on the wall, her mind automatically cataloging details that might prove crucial in the hours ahead. Major Torres approached as the room emptied, her expression thoughtful rather than suspicious. "Marchetti, I've been flying for 15 years, and I've never heard of the Sarajevo Sweep Formation. Where exactly did you encounter it?" The question was asked with professional curiosity, but Ghost detected an underlying note of genuine respect for someone who'd clearly seen combat in theaters that most Nelly's pilots only knew from classified briefings. Ghost appreciated Tor's directness. Unlike some of the other pilots, the Major wasn't trying to challenge her credibility or dig for classified information. She was simply trying to understand the experience of a fellow aviator. "The Balkans were complicated, Major. A lot of things happened there that don't make it into official reports." Her answer was deliberately vague, but her tone conveyed the weight of experiences that couldn't be easily summarized. Torres nodded, recognizing the careful non-answer of someone with operational security training. "Well, for what it's worth, your analysis impressed the hell out of the general. I haven't seen Holloway look that surprised since the day a lieutenant correctly predicted weather patterns that meteorology had missed entirely." She extended her hand with a slight smile. "Good luck with whatever comes next, Ghost." The handshake was firm and brief. carrying the mutual respect of professional aviators who understood that knowledge was often earned through experiences that couldn't be shared freely. As Torres left the briefing room, Ghost found herself alone with the satellite image and the growing certainty that her quiet assignment at Nellie's was about to become significantly more complicated. Ghost remained in the empty briefing room, studying the satellite image with the focused intensity of someone seeing familiar ghosts in unfamiliar contexts. The formation pattern triggered memories she'd worked hard to compartmentalize, memories of missions flown over mountainous terrain where the difference between success and catastrophe measured in seconds rather than minutes. She recognized the disciplined precision of the aircraft spacing, the calculated risk assessment that had gone into selecting that particular flight pattern. The intelligence section occupied the basement level of Building 7, a windowless maze of secure offices and briefing rooms where classified information flowed like water through carefully constructed channels. Ghost descended the stairs at exactly 1400 hours, her boots echoing against polished concrete floors that had witnessed decades of military secrets. The guard at the security checkpoint verified her identification with mechanical precision before directing her to Conference Room C. Colonel Sarah Mitchell was waiting when Ghost entered, along with two civilian analysts whose badges identified them as Department of Defense contractors. Mitchell, a veteran intelligence officer with steel-gray hair and sharp blue eyes, gestured toward a chair at the small conference table. "Captain Marchetti, thank you for joining us. I understand you've provided some valuable insights regarding our morning's mystery formation." Ghost settled into the indicated chair, automatically noting the room's security features and escape routes, habits formed during assignments where situational awareness meant the difference between completing a mission and becoming a casualty statistic. "Colonel, I identified the formation based on previous operational experience. I'm ready to assist with further analysis." One of the civilian analysts, a thin man in his 50s named Dr. Peterson, opened a thick folder filled with additional satellite imagery. "Captain, what General Holloway showed you this morning represents less than 10% of our available surveillance data. We've been tracking similar formations across multiple locations for the past 3 weeks." He spread photographs across the table like tarot cards, revealing an unwelcome future. Ghost studied the new images, her analytical mind processing patterns and variations that told a story of systematic reconnaissance operations. The formations were consistent in their basic structure, but adapted to different terrain and atmospheric conditions, the hallmark of professional military operations conducted by personnel with extensive tactical training. "Colonel, these aren't random flights. Someone is conducting comprehensive area surveillance, using protocols that should be restricted to special operations units." Mitchell nodded grimly. "That's our assessment as well, Captain. The question is who has access to these tactics and why they're being employed in domestic airspace without coordination through normal channels." She leaned forward, her expression conveying the gravity of the situation. "What concerns us most is the precision of the formations and the apparent sophistication of the aircraft involved." The second civilian analyst, a woman with short blonde hair and alert green eyes, introduced herself as Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the Defense Intelligence Agency. "Captain Marchetti, we've reviewed your service record, and your experience in the Balkans makes you uniquely qualified to assess these operations. We need your professional opinion on the tactical capabilities we're observing." Ghost appreciated the direct approach, though she recognized the careful way Dr. Walsh had referenced her classified assignments without revealing specific details. "Based on what I'm seeing, whoever is conducting these flights has access to advanced aircraft, sophisticated communication systems, and tactical knowledge that suggests military training at special operations levels. The formation discipline alone indicates years of experience." Colonel Mitchell exchanged glances with the two analysts before continuing. "Captain, there's something else you need to see." She activated a wall-mounted monitor that displayed radar tracking data from multiple installations. These formations have appeared simultaneously at locations separated by hundreds of miles, maintaining perfect coordination despite operating beyond normal radio communication range. The implications hit Ghost like turbulence at 30,000 feet, sudden, disorienting, and potentially dangerous. Coordinated operations across multiple theaters suggested either a massive military exercise that had somehow escaped normal command oversight or something far more concerning. She studied the radar tracks, noting the precise timing and flawless execution that characterized each formation's movement. "Colonel," Ghost said slowly, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone choosing words that couldn't be taken back. "If these operations are being conducted without proper authorization, we're looking at a potential security breach of significant proportions. The level of coordination required for simultaneous multi-site operations suggests either insider knowledge or—" She paused, unwilling to voice the darker possibility that was forming in her mind. "Or what, Captain?" Dr. Peterson prompted, his pen poised over a legal pad filled with notes. Ghost met his eyes directly, her expression conveying the weight of experience earned through missions where assumptions could prove fatal. "Or we're dealing with personnel who were trained in these tactics through official channels and are now operating outside normal command authority." The words hung in the secure conference room like smoke from a crashed aircraft, heavy with implications that reached far beyond simple airspace violations. Colonel Mitchell closed the folder of satellite images with deliberate precision, her movements carrying the weight of someone who just received confirmation of her worst fears. "Captain Marchetti, based on your analysis and our ongoing surveillance, I'm authorizing you for enhanced access to this investigation. You'll be working directly with a joint task force comprising Air Force Intelligence, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and selected personnel from Special Operations Command." Ghost recognized the careful language of classification levels and need-to-know protocols, but she also understood that her quiet assignment at Nellie's had just evolved into something that could define the remainder of her military career. "Colonel, what's the timeline for this investigation?" Her question carried the practical concern of an operational pilot who needed to understand mission parameters and resource constraints. Dr. Walsh consulted her tablet before responding. "Captain, based on the pattern of sightings, we estimate that these formations will continue their reconnaissance operations for approximately 2 more weeks. After that, they'll either conclude their current mission or transition to a different operational phase." She paused, her expression conveying urgency without alarm. "We need to identify their command structure and operational objectives before that transition occurs." The math was simple but daunting. 14 days to unravel a mystery that involved sophisticated aircraft, highly trained personnel, and tactical knowledge that should have been restricted to a small number of military specialists. Ghost had worked under similar time constraints before, but never while trying to investigate operations that might involve her own former colleagues or classified programs she'd once been part of. "Understood," Ghost replied, her voice carrying the steady confidence of someone accepting a mission that couldn't be refused. "What resources will be available for this investigation?" She was already mentally cataloging the intelligence assets, surveillance capabilities, and analytical tools that would be necessary to track and identify the mysterious formations. Colonel Mitchell smiled for the first time since Ghost had entered the conference room. "Captain, you'll have access to anything you need: satellite surveillance, electronic intelligence, communication intercepts, and direct coordination with field units." Her tone suggested that normal budgetary and bureaucratic constraints had been suspended for this particular investigation. As the briefing concluded and Ghost prepared to leave the secure conference room, Dr. Peterson handed her a sealed envelope containing additional classified materials. "Captain, your preliminary analysis suggests these operations are being conducted by personnel with special operations training. If that's accurate, You may be the only person currently available who possesses the operational experience necessary to predict their next moves. Ghost accepted the envelope, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a flight harness that couldn't be removed. She'd spent years trying to blend into the background at Nellie's, perfecting her skills while avoiding the kind of high-profile assignments that attracted unwanted attention. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans for Captain Vivienne Marchetti. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the flight line as Ghost walked toward the hangar that housed her assigned F-16, her mind processing the intelligence briefing and its implications for the days ahead. The mysterious formations represented more than a simple security concern. They were a puzzle that could only be solved by someone who understood both the tactical sophistication of special operations and the personal motivations of pilots who'd chosen to operate outside normal command authority. Her secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Colonel Mitchell. Additional surveillance data available at 600 tomorrow. Joint Task Force briefing at 800. Recommend you review classified materials tonight. Situation developing faster than anticipated. The message confirmed what Ghost had already suspected. This investigation was about to accelerate beyond normal operational timelines. As she reached her aircraft, Ghost paused to study the evening sky, automatically scanning for aircraft that shouldn't be there. The habit was so ingrained that she barely noticed doing it anymore, but tonight it carried additional significance. Somewhere in that vast expanse of desert airspace, highly trained pilots were conducting reconnaissance missions using tactics she'd helped develop years earlier in very different circumstances. Ghost climbed into her F-16's cockpit, going through pre-flight checks with mechanical precision, while her mind worked through tactical possibilities and operational scenarios. The aircraft felt familiar and reassuring beneath her hands, a known quantity in a situation that was rapidly becoming anything but predictable. As she completed her inspection, one thought echoed through her mind with crystalline clarity. Whoever was flying those mysterious formations knew exactly what they were doing, and they were very good at it. The secure folder Dr. Peterson had given her contained surveillance data that painted a picture of operational sophistication that impressed even Ghost's experienced eye. The formations weren't just using modified Sarajevo sweep tactics. They were employing a comprehensive suite of reconnaissance techniques that suggested access to multiple classified tactical manuals. Someone had invested considerable time and resources in training personnel to execute these missions with textbook precision. Ghost spread the satellite images across her kitchen table that evening, studying them under the bright halogen lights she'd installed for detailed map work. Each photograph revealed new layers of tactical complexity, formation adjustments based on weather conditions, altitude modifications to avoid civilian air traffic, and communication protocols that maintained operational security while enabling precise coordination. This wasn't amateur hour. This was professional military aviation executed by people who understood both the technical requirements and the strategic implications of their missions. Her secure phone rang at 21:47 hours, displaying Colonel Mitchell's encrypted number. Captain Marchetti, we've had a development. One of our surveillance satellites captured detailed imagery of the aircraft themselves, not just their formations. Mitchell's voice carried the tension of someone dealing with information that changed fundamental assumptions. Can you be at intelligence section at 5:30 tomorrow morning? Ghost checked her watch, calculating sleep time against operational requirements. Yes, ma'am. Should I expect this to alter our investigation timeline? She was already mentally preparing for the possibility that 14 days might be overly optimistic for solving this particular puzzle. Captain, when you see these new images, you'll understand why we need to accelerate our analysis. The aircraft we're tracking aren't just sophisticated, they're not supposed to exist. Mitchell's words carried implications that reached far beyond simple airspace violations into territories that Ghost recognized from her most classified assignments. As she ended the call, Ghost stared at the satellite images spread across her table, seeing familiar tactical patterns in an entirely new light. If Colonel Mitchell was correct about the aircraft themselves, then this investigation was about to evolve from a mystery into something that could potentially reshape her understanding of military aviation and operational security. She gathered the classified materials, secured them in her personal safe, and prepared for what might be the most complex mission of her career. The pre-dawn darkness of the intelligence section felt heavier than usual as Ghost descended the familiar stairs at exactly 5:30 hours. Colonel Mitchell was waiting in Conference Room C, along with Dr. Walsh and a new face, a tall man in his 40s wearing the uniform of a Navy commander. The additional personnel suggested that whatever they discovered had elevated this investigation beyond Air Force jurisdiction. "Captain Marchetti," Mitchell began without preamble, "I'd like you to meet Commander David Chen from the Office of Naval Intelligence. His expertise in advanced aircraft systems will be crucial for understanding what we're about to show you." The introduction carried the weight of inter-service cooperation that typically occurred only during significant security concerns. Commander Chen stood to shake Ghost's hand, his grip firm and professional. "Captain, I've reviewed your service record and Colonel Mitchell's assessment of your tactical analysis capabilities. What we're about to share with you represents some of the most sensitive intelligence currently available to the Department of Defense." His tone conveyed both respect for Ghost's experience and the gravity of the information they were about to discuss. Dr. Walsh activated the wall-mounted monitor, displaying high-resolution satellite imagery that made the previous photographs look like amateur snapshots. The aircraft in these new images were visible in unprecedented detail, their sleek profiles and advanced design features clearly identifiable despite the altitude at which the photographs had been taken. Ghost studied the images with growing amazement and concern. "Colonel," Ghost said slowly, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone seeing familiar technology in an unexpected context, "these aircraft appear to be incorporating stealth technology that should be restricted to specific classified programs." She paused, studying details that triggered memories of briefings she'd attended years earlier. The airframe design suggests capabilities that exceed most current operational aircraft. Commander Chen nodded grimly. "Captain, your assessment is correct. What you're looking at represents technology that officially doesn't exist in operational form. The aircraft incorporate design elements from multiple classified development programs, combined in ways that suggest either unauthorized access to restricted technical data or—" He let the sentence hang unfinished, the implications clear to everyone in the room. Ghost felt the familiar chill of operational security concerns that reached beyond simple policy violations into potential threats to national security. "Commander, if these aircraft incorporate classified technology, then whoever built them has access to information that should be restricted to the highest levels of military and defense contractor personnel." Her words carried the weight of someone who understood both the technical requirements and the security protocols surrounding advanced military aviation. Colonel Mitchell leaned forward, her expression conveying the urgency of someone dealing with a situation that was rapidly moving beyond their initial assumptions. "Captain, based on your tactical analysis and Commander Chen's technical assessment, we need to determine not just who is operating these aircraft, but how they gained access to the technology and manufacturing capabilities required to build them." The implications were staggering. Ghost was no longer looking at a simple case of unauthorized flights or even rogue military personnel conducting independent operations. They were dealing with someone or some organization that possessed the resources, technical knowledge, and manufacturing capabilities to produce advanced military aircraft that officially didn't exist. The scope of such an operation suggested either state-level involvement or a massive security breach within the defense industrial base. Dr. Walsh consulted her tablet before continuing the briefing. Captain, our analysis suggests that at least 12 of these aircraft are currently operational, based on the coordination patterns we've observed across multiple surveillance sites. If each aircraft represents the same level of technological sophistication we're seeing in these images, we're looking at a fleet capability that rivals anything currently in the U.S. inventory. Ghost studied the technical details visible in the satellite imagery, her mind automatically cataloging the advanced systems and design features that would be required to achieve the performance characteristics they were observing. The manufacturing precision alone would require access to specialized facilities and materials that are closely monitored by defense security agencies. This isn't something that could be accomplished without significant resources and institutional support. Commander Chen opened a classified folder containing additional technical analysis. Captain, that's our assessment as well. The question we're facing is whether we're dealing with a domestic operation that has somehow avoided detection, or foreign involvement that suggests a security compromise of unprecedented scope. His words carried the weight of strategic implications that extended far beyond immediate operational concerns. The briefing room fell into thoughtful silence as the assembled personnel processed the evolution of their investigation from mysterious aircraft sightings to potential national security crisis. Ghost recognized the careful way information was being shared, the gradual revelation of classified details that painted an increasingly complex picture of technological capability and operational sophistication. "Colonel," Ghost said finally, her voice carrying the steady confidence of someone accepting a mission that couldn't be refused, "what's our next step?" She understood that her role had evolved from tactical analyst to key investigator in what might prove to be one of the most significant security challenges of her career. Mitchell smiled grimly. "Captain, you're going to do what you do best, analyze the operational patterns and predict what comes next. But this time, you'll be working with resources and support that reflect the strategic importance of this investigation." Her tone suggested that normal limitations and constraints had been suspended in favor of whatever approach might yield results. As the briefing concluded, Ghost found herself holding classified materials that represented weeks of intensive intelligence gathering and analysis. The weight of the folders felt heavier than their actual mass, carrying the burden of information that could reshape military aviation and defense security protocols. She'd accepted difficult assignments before, but never one where the implications reached so far beyond immediate tactical concerns. Commander Chen approached as the others prepared to leave. "Captain, I wanted you to know that your tactical analysis impressed a lot of very senior people yesterday. The ability to identify those formation patterns probably saved us weeks of investigation time." His tone carried professional respect tinged with curiosity about her operational background. Ghost appreciated the acknowledgement while maintaining the careful boundaries that protected classified information. "Commander, the formations were textbook special operations reconnaissance. Anyone with the right experience would have recognized them." Her response was deliberately modest, deflecting attention from specific details of her operational history. "Perhaps," Chen replied with a slight smile, "but not everyone would have had the confidence to speak up in a room full of skeptical pilots and a surprised general. That took professional courage as well as technical knowledge." He extended his hand in a brief, firm handshake before gathering his materials and leaving the conference room. Ghost remained alone with the classified folders, studying satellite images that revealed aircraft technology she'd only seen in highly restricted briefings years earlier. The connection between her past assignments and the current investigation was becoming impossible to ignore, though she wasn't yet certain whether that represented opportunity or significant personal risk. Her secure phone buzzed with another encrypted message from Colonel Mitchell, Flight operations authorized beginning tomorrow. You'll be conducting aerial reconnaissance using specially equipped F-16 with advanced sensor packages. Mission briefing at 600. The message confirmed what Ghost had suspected. This investigation was about to move from conference rooms to operational airspace. As she secured the classified materials and prepared to leave the intelligence section, Ghost reflected on the strange trajectory that had brought her to this point. 3 days earlier, she'd been a relatively anonymous pilot at Nellie's, focused on training missions and routine operations. Now she found herself at the center of an investigation involving advanced aircraft technology, mysterious reconnaissance operations, and potential security breaches that could affect national defense capabilities. The evening flight line was quiet as Ghost walked toward her quarters, the distant sound of jet engines providing a familiar backdrop to her thoughts. Tomorrow would bring her first operational flight related to the investigation, using sensor equipment she'd never worked with before to track aircraft that officially didn't exist. The irony wasn't lost on her. She would be using cutting-edge technology to investigate other cutting-edge technology that someone had developed outside normal channels. Ghost spent the evening reviewing technical manuals for the advanced sensor systems that would be installed on her F-16, familiarizing herself with capabilities that exceeded anything she'd used during her previous assignments. The equipment represented years of development and millions of dollars in defense research, now being deployed to solve a mystery that seemed to grow more complex with each new piece of information. Her final thought before sleep was a tactical consideration that had been nagging at her since the morning briefing. Whoever was operating those mysterious aircraft had to know they were being watched. The precision of their operations and the sophistication of their technology suggested intelligence capabilities that would certainly include awareness of military surveillance efforts. The question that kept her awake was simple but troubling. If they knew they were being tracked, why were they continuing their reconnaissance missions with such obvious visibility? The answer, Ghost suspected, would determine whether she was investigating a security breach or walking into something far more dangerous and complex than anyone yet realized. The pre-flight briefing at 600 hours felt different from any Ghost had experienced during her years at Nellie's. The hangar had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, and the modified F-16 waiting on the flight line incorporated sensor systems she'd only seen in classified technical manuals. Colonel Mitchell stood beside the aircraft with two technicians from the Defense Intelligence Agency, their expressions conveying the gravity of what they were about to attempt. "Captain Marchetti," Mitchell began, her voice carrying the weight of operational urgency, "your aircraft has been equipped with the most advanced airborne surveillance systems currently available to the Department of Defense. You'll be conducting reconnaissance flights over the areas where we've detected the mysterious formations, gathering electronic intelligence and detailed imagery that should help us identify the aircraft and their operational capabilities." Ghost studied the external modifications to her F-16, noting the additional sensor pods and communication arrays that had been integrated into the aircraft's design. The equipment represented technology she'd heard about but never expected to use operationally, capabilities that would allow her to detect and analyze aircraft signatures at unprecedented ranges and resolutions. Senior Master Sergeant Rebecca Torres, one of Nellie's most experienced crew chiefs, approached with a tablet containing technical specifications. "Captain, the sensor suite includes passive radar systems, electronic signal intelligence gathering equipment, and high-resolution imaging systems that can operate effectively at altitudes up to 45,000 feet. Her tone carried professional pride mixed with concern about the complexity of the systems she'd help install. Ghost appreciated Tor's thoroughness while recognizing the significant responsibility that came with operating such advanced equipment. "Sergeant, what are the operational limitations I need to be aware of?" She was already mentally calculating flight profiles and sensor employment strategies that would maximize intelligence gathering while minimizing the risk of detection by the aircraft she was hunting. "Ma'am, the primary limitation is power consumption," Torres replied, consulting her technical notes. "The sensor systems require significant electrical power, which will reduce your operational endurance to approximately 90 minutes of intensive surveillance operations. After that, you'll need to return to base for battery recharging and data download." Colonel Mitchell stepped forward with a mission folder containing flight routes and operational parameters. "Captain, you'll be conducting systematic surveillance of the areas where we've detected formation activity, focusing on establishing patterns of movement and identifying potential staging areas or command facilities. Your first flight will cover the northern Nevada corridor, where we've had the most consistent sightings." Ghost reviewed the mission parameters, noting the careful balance between comprehensive coverage and operational security that characterized the flight planning. The routes had been designed to appear routine while positioning her aircraft for optimal sensor employment, a delicate balance that required precise timing and navigation. "Colonel, what are the rules of engagement if I encounter the aircraft we're investigating?" The question hung in the morning air like jet exhaust, carrying implications that reached far beyond simple reconnaissance operations. Mitchell's expression hardened into the mask of a commanding officer dealing with possibilities she hoped wouldn't materialize. "Captain, you are authorized to observe and record, but under no circumstances are you to engage or attempt intercept unless you receive specific authorization from this command. We're still not certain what we're dealing with, and we don't want to escalate the situation unnecessarily." Ghost nodded, understanding both the tactical wisdom and the strategic caution behind those orders. Engaging unknown aircraft operating advanced technology could trigger consequences that extended far beyond immediate operational concerns, particularly if they were dealing with classified programs or foreign involvement. "Understood, ma'am. Observe and report." As she completed her pre-flight inspection and prepared to launch, Ghost felt the familiar anticipation that came with challenging missions. The aircraft felt heavier than usual, weighted down with advanced sensors, and the expectations of intelligence personnel who needed information that only she could provide. The morning sky stretched endlessly above the Nevada desert, holding secrets that she was about to attempt to uncover. The takeoff was routine, but everything that followed represented new territory for Ghost's operational experience. The sensor systems came online with electronic precision, providing her with information displays and capability options she'd never had access to before. The aircraft's performance characteristics had changed subtly due to the additional equipment, requiring constant adjustments to maintain optimal flight profiles. At 38,000 feet over the northern Nevada corridor, Ghost began systematic sensor sweeps of the areas where surveillance satellites had detected formation activity. The electronic landscape revealed a complexity of signals,